Hi guys, and welcome to one more ReaYou video. Today we have a big printer to show you. It's the TL-D3 Pro. This is an Idex machine, or in other words, an independent dual extruder machine. This model is an ODM printer and it's being sold by ReaYou. So, let's start with the unboxing.
Hey you guys! Okay, let's do this. At the sides, we can find a couple of boxes that contain parts and extras, but we will check those later. Also at the sides, we can find the two print heads. Before taking anything else, we recommend to take the glass out and this way avoid breaking it. Next, we can take the top half out. And finally, the bottom half. Now, inside the boxes, we can find lots of stuff such as a spool of PLA filament, a couple of cables, a cutter, one spool holder, rubber strips, a bag with parts, zip ties, a bag with screws, a bag with tools, a USB cable, and a spatula. Inside the bag of parts, we can find a spare nozzle and tools to unclog the hot end. Inside the bag of tools, we can find many wrenches, some small Allen keys, and a bigger Allen key with a round tip. Inside the second box, we can find a second spool of PLA filament, a bag with filament samples, a second spool holder, a power cord, an adapter for the power cord, and a bag that contains the memory card and the memory card reader. And this is all that was inside the package. From the bottom half of the printer, we can see some details such as the 310 by 310 aluminum heat bed that moves on wheels. The heat bed cable is nicely secured by a strain relief at the back of the plate. The leveling knobs are big and easy to reach and have the orientation indication on them. At the front, we have a big 4.3-inch color touch screen. The Y-axis carriage moves on a couple of 20 by 20 metal profiles. These profiles are far apart, which provides good stability for the Y carriage. The top half is secured by 4 screws, and those screws will go through here. At the back panel, we have the connector for the heat bed cable and the connectors for each print head. Also at the back side is the power connector. At the right side, we have the on and off switch, and at the left side, we have the USB connector and the memory card slot. And now, let's check what's inside. The electronics are very simple. We have the touch screen, the memory card slot and USB connector board, and the main board. The board's brand is written on the upper side. As usual, on most machines, the wires that go to the screw-type connectors don't have any ferrules on them and are tinned. So that was the first thing we fixed. We crimped ferrules on all these wires. On the side of the board, we have 5 drivers. These will control 2 X motors, 2 Z motors, and 1 Y motor. Near the MOSFETs, we can find a couple more drivers. These are the 2 extruder drivers. We also find 1 stepper motor. This one is for the Y-axis. There is also a cooling fan for the drivers. The microcontroller used on this board is an 8-bit Atmega 2560. The power supply is a 24 volt and 14.6 amp Meanwhile power supply. This is actually a good one. At the sides, we can see a bit of foam. This foam is for when we insert the screws to secure the top half. If they fall, they will not be lost inside. And this is the top half. Both X and Z motors are located at the back side. The X carriages run on a linear guide and move by independent belts. At the back side, we can see the 2 lead screws. All the carriages are made from thick metal. As for the end stops, this printer is equipped with a couple of optic sensors for the Z, one on each side, and a couple of optic sensors for the X-axis, also one for each side. Only the Y-axis end stop is a mechanical switch, and it's located at the back side of the Y-axis. Okay, let's start with the assembly. We will need 4 M5x25 screws. Next, you need to place the top half over the bottom half and with the metal profiles aligned with the holes. Then, turn the printer on its side, insert the screws and tighten them. Next are the print heads. You have one marked as P1 and the other marked as P2. They are sort of like mirrored, and the layer cooling fans must be facing away from each other. The print heads have the extruder inside, which makes them direct drive. They are a bit heavy since they are equipped with normal stepper drivers, instead of the traditional pancake steppers. At the top, we have the connector and the extruder lever. If we open the print head, we will see the hot end they used. This one is very similar with the ones used by the Ender 3 printers. For the layer cooling, we have a blower and a printed fan duct. For the second print head, we can see that it's basically the same except for the hot end, which is smaller and has an adjustable mechanism with a spring that we use to adjust the height. To secure each print head, we need 4 M3x12 screws. Now, this is very important. Print head P1 must be installed at the left side, and print head P2 must be installed at the right side. Just place it against the carriage and from the back side, tighten the 4 screws. Do the same for the second print head. Now, all we need to do is install the spool holders. Get the remaining screws, spring washers, and T-nuts. Place them on the first spool holder. Then, secure the spool holder. They must be installed at the back side of the top horizontal profile. Do the same for the second spool holder. Now, let's connect all the cables. The heat bed cable is connected to the round connector at the back side of the printer. Next, grab the extruder cables and connect the first one to the connector on the right and to the print head labeled P1. Then, connect the second cable to the connector on the left and to the print head labeled P2. These cables can be secured to the back side of the Z carriages. Use a couple of zip ties to secure them. And this is how the cables look like. Next are the X and Z axis cables. On each side of the printer, you will find these cables with tags on them. Connect the X cables to the X axis stepper motor and X axis end stop. And then connect the Z cables to the Z axis stepper motor and Z end stop. Do the same for the other side. Last but not least is the power cord. Now we need to go through some mechanical checks. The Y carriage has two adjustable wheels, one at the right and the other at the left. We need to check the wheel's grip and adjust if necessary. To adjust, we need to use a wrench and rotate the eccentric nut that is above the wheel. But don't over-tighten the eccentric nut. You need to find the sweet spot, which is the point where the wheel no longer spins freely. You also need to check the wheels on the Z carriages and adjust the grip if needed. These wheels have two eccentric nuts on each wheel. You need to turn both and make sure the wheel is parallel with the vertical profile. As for the belt adjustment, there is no way to adjust the tension on both X-axis belts. In our case, they were fine. On the Y-axis belt, on the other hand, you can adjust the tension. To adjust the belt tension, you just need to loosen the 4 screws that secure the Y-axis motor and adjust. Now we can install the glass and secure it with the 4 clamps. And the assembly is now complete. The blue rubber strips are optional, so you can install them if you like. After the power on and before we can print something, we need to level the bed and both nozzles. So let's start by homing all the axes. Go to Tools, then Move Axis, and then click on Home. The printer will now home all the axes. We don't need to bother with the alignment of the two lead screws because this printer is equipped with two end stops. This means that it will always sync both z-axis every time it runs the home sequence. Next, go to Tools and Temperature. Click on the bed and type in 60. This will heat up the bed up to 60 degrees C. Once the bed reaches the set temperature, move the P1 print head to the first corner. And with a 0.1 mm thick piece of paper, adjust the bed by turning the leveling knobs. When you feel the nozzle touching the paper, move to the next corner and repeat the process. Do this on all 4 corners and more than once until you have the bed leveled and stable. Okay, now we have the bed leveled. All we need to do now is to get both nozzles at the same height. And this is very simple to do. Because you already leveled the bed with the first print head, you know the distance from the first nozzle to the bed. So choose one corner and move the second print head to that corner. Grab your 0.1 mm thick paper and check how the second nozzle is. The P1 print head will always be the master print head for everything, so you only need to adjust the P2 print head. Remember the adjust mechanism? You need to loosen the lock screw first and then rotate the nut above it to lower or raise the nozzle. In our case, we need to lower the nozzle. So let's loosen the screw first and then we use the big wrench that was inside the tool bag and slowly rotate the nut to the right. Do this carefully and make sure you don't pinch any of the wires inside. Keep rotating and checking with the paper until you have the correct height. Once at the correct height, don't forget to tighten the lock screw. Now we have both nozzles at the same Z, but we still need to check the nozzle alignment in X and Y. To check this, we need filament. So heat up the nozzles and insert the filaments on both extruders. Inside the memory card, you will find many files. In there, you have an alignment cube. Copy it to the root of the card and print that file. The printer will then print a cube using both print heads. One print head will print the walls of the cube and the other will print on the inside of the cube. This will allow you to see if both nozzles are aligned in X and Y axis. You don't need to print the entire cube, just enough to see if it's okay or not. In our case, it was okay, but if you need to adjust, go to Settings and adjust the X2 and Y2 values. You can do this adjustment while printing. Okay, all done. It's time to print. This printer has 3 different print modes: dual mode, duplicate mode, and mirror mode. With dual mode, we can print one model using one print head or one model using both print heads with different colors, or print one model and use 2 different types of filament. This is very handy, for example, if you want to use one print head to print a model with, let's say, PLA, and use the second print head to print only the supports with soluble filament. Our first tests, and to dial in our profile, we printed with only one print head. We used PLA for the first prints, and then we printed this black cube with TPU. The first cube printed with orange PLA was not that bad, but we noticed some diagonal lines and some minor ghosting. We also noticed the diagonal lines on our benchy, which are most probably caused by the drivers. On the front of the benchy, we can also see a bit of cooling issues, but on the top arcs is not that bad. The top surface is also good. The cube done with TPU filament turned out good and with very smooth walls. Next, we ran a few tests using both print heads and printed a model with two colors. For that, we sliced this Flexi Rex. We had to set up a nose shield in the slicer because when printing with two heads and one at a time, the one that is standing by and not printing will ooze a bit of filament. That filament will either drop on the bed when moving back to the model or stick to the model itself. A good solution for this is to have a tray under the nozzle secured to the Z carriage, and with a metal brush so that when the print head would move out, would pass through the brush and this way clean the nozzle. That is something that we might think about and design for this later, but it would be great if something like that was included already with the printer. In this case, the shield worked and blocked most of the filament ooze, and the result is this cute dual color T-Rex. Inside the memory card, we can find this already sliced dual color example. We can see that the profile used is not perfect, but it's still a nice example to print and test. Next, we tested the duplicate mode. The first G-code with the cube is printed in double. Both print heads print the same model and at the same time. This mode is great if we need to print several models at the same time. By using two print heads, the print time will be reduced in half. And finally, we tested the mirror mode. The printer will now print the same G-code in double but mirrored. Both print heads print the same model but moving the x-axis in the opposite direction. For our last test, we decided to print a pair of sandals in TPU using the mirror mode. This is a great example of what the mirror mode can do. We used 2 different colors to test these sandals, and since they ended up really nice, we will print the other pair to match the color. This printer is not equipped with filament runout sensor or print resume. Even if it was equipped with print resume in case of power failure, it would not work because the X gantry is so heavy that when we turn off the power, the gantry falls down and it would fall on the print and ruin it. Also, and because of that, we recommend to include in the end script the following lines. First, move the bed forward to its full extent. Then, home the X-axis to park both print heads. This will keep the print heads away from the heatbed area. Then, home the Z. This will lower the Z and allows you to power off the printer safely. The most important is that you comment or delete the M84 command. The firmware will disable automatically the X and Y axis after some time, but it will always keep the Z-axis engaged, and most probably for the reasons that we just mentioned. If you keep the M84 command, it will disengage the Z as well, and if the Z is not already down, it will fall down. Now, at the time we are publishing this video, the seller is having a big discount and it's selling at a much lower price. As for a last note, we had a lot of fun with this one, but we would like to test and see the performance of this printer with some better drivers, but overall the printer is actually very nice. We might do that driver test in the future, so keep following us here on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter for updates.
And if you are not a subscriber yet, go ahead and subscribe our channel. And don't forget to activate the little bell to be notified every time we publish a new video. Also, if you like our work and wish to help us to have more cool content, you can using our Banggood affiliate links, Patreon or PayPal. So check the video description for more details. And we will see you guys next time. Bye!